says we're starting live. We are on the air. Hello, this is Idle Dilettante, here to recover from the horrible embarrassment of not being able to connect with Kevin Logan earlier via Google Hangouts. So I stopped everything and hit the books, and I'm here with Will McLeod for my first live broadcast.
Hello.
Will McLeod, you are a journalist. You cover Scottish politics, and what else do you do?
I'm a video gamer. I, do stuff like that. Not particularly ready for the live broadcast, sorry, but
okay, that's okay. It doesn't. This is very informal. We're just having a chat,
yeah. Some of the other stuff I do is I do have a radio show called Hopping Mad, and we do a lot of broadcasting about various political and economic issues there. And we haven't used Hangouts before, so it's cool to kind of see how Hangouts on air works.
Yeah, well, me neither, and that was the problem because I was accustomed to doing it with you on Skype and for Hopping Mad, but that's a recorded broadcast, and this is live and not a platform I was familiar with either.
Yeah, well, you've used Skype to do live broadcasting before, including stuff that goes out on actual radio stations. So Skype is.
It's all just become so intertwined now. YouTube and Google, for instance, are now both controlled by the same interest.
Yeah. So it's.
Which is what makes this possible.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how that's gonna go forward, and to see how people are gonna be using these to do live blogging and video blogging and stuff like that.
Well, mostly people use them for radio broadcast conferences, debates, and hangouts like these.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm glad to see that it's working well. It's new in your world. What stories are you covering? You want to plug anything right now?
No, I'm writing about the constitutional settlement in the UK. They're messing both with Scottish taxation and with Scottish representation. And normally that's a bad thing, as we learned in 1776. But doing both in the same time, immediately after a big national movement got a lot of support for independence, isn't the smartest thing. So I don't see how this stuff doesn't lead to greater independence, and some of the or a greater push for independence. And some of the people who go ahead.
You're very strongly pro-Scottish independence, I know.
Yes, well, and that's just based on looking at the numbers and looking at what would be available to the people of Scotland and the sort of policies they would want to pursue and the options they would have. Unfortunately, the UK's political structure focuses on the impossible and, just kind of plugging along, as opposed to asking, what can we do? Where can we go? That's a real problem. You can see that, contrast between Democrats and Republicans in the United States. The right wing tends to be a group of people who want to shut things down and say the government can't ever do anything right. And folks on the left tend to be the folks who are like, well, let's build stuff, though, which is why the tech industry has a big relationship with the Democratic Party. Not necessarily the most healthy thing, because you don't want any one group of corporate interests to get any kind of a primacy representation, but the big corporate interests supporting the Democrats tend to be, Google, the tech industry.
Yeah, well, that's my problem with right-wingers and, fascists generally, is that they're just sort of the party of no. They're the party of no immigration, no gay rights, no women's rights. I don't see a lot of positive suggestions here about what should be done. I just hear a lot about what definitely shouldn't happen.
And what can't happen, and what we just don't have the money for, and we're running out of money. And that's not how funding a government works.
Exactly.
And I'm sorry, the debt ceiling, they don't know how this stuff works, and they want to be the ones running it.
At the risk of being horribly mocked, I'm going to say, how can you run out of money when it's a fiat currency?
I mean, that's the thing. People don't understand how money works. Debt is not what pays for the creation of money. Keystrokes are. I mean, keystrokes on a keyboard at the Fed.
Oh yeah, somebody just puts some more zeros in the box, and then you print out another $1 million. It's
you don't print anymore. Like it actually
not even
the money. Most of the money that is floating around is electronic.
You're right. It's mostly digital. It's on your credit cards and in your bank account, and has no real cash flow.
And people are talking about digital currency. The dollar is a digital currency. It also has some paper and some coinage for people who aren't purely using digital currency. But that is dying, and eventually we will be at a place where the dollar becomes a purely digital currency because there's no reason to have the other stuff. Also, the reason that we create debt, national debt, is not because we use it to pay for anything. National debt exists to provide banks and individuals with risk-free investment.
Yeah, exactly. That's what the TARP fund was about.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I have terrible manners.
That's all right. There are people who've done far worse things than these.
Oh yeah, totally. Can I say one thing about Bitcoin that I think is really hilarious? Always you hear journalists describe Bitcoin as an untraceable currency. And that just seems fundamentally silly to me, because Bitcoin is actually the most traceable currency, because the only way you can track where it is at all is because of the blockchain. And everybody has this blockchain downloaded to their computer, which is a registry of Bitcoin transactions from person to person. And these are anonymized by these keys, like these long alphanumerical character sets. But each of those accounts correspond to a person. So long as you know which Bitcoin accounts are related to which person, you can always look up the balance of their wallets on Bitref. So it's actually the world's most traceable currency.
Yeah, there's that, which is security risk. One of the other things is when they took out, what was it, Silk Road?
Yeah.
They now have the list of everybody who's ever bought anything on Silk Road, and they're trying to put those little bits of information with a face. And so one of the things that I'm almost certain they're doing, having talked with folks here in DC, I am almost certain that they are actually selling stuff that's drug paraphernalia to people to try to nail down who these people are. The government sold drugs before. So either they have somebody who's a small fish, who's a confidential informant, who is selling illegal drugs to people and helping them build a database of who this is on Bitcoin, or they're just doing it themselves.
Well, one of the undercover agents with Bitcoin also made off with hundreds of thousands of dollars at least from Silk Road. And he was recently put on trial for that, because his trial wouldn't proceed until they'd finished putting Dread Pirate Roberts on trial.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's the thing is they're called cryptocurrencies, but they're nowhere near as secure as dollars. If they really were secure, untraceable, no one could use them, then I almost guarantee you, well, not no one could use it, but no one could find out what they were. I would guarantee you there would be banks putting supplies of their money in Bitcoin. There would be a Bitcoin bank that was run by people in Switzerland, because that's how the Swiss do.
That would, yeah, you're right. But that would break the fundamental libertarian ideal of Bitcoin, which is like no gods, no masters, completely decentralized currency controlled by no state at all.
Yeah. Well, the thing is,
there's no Fed for Bitcoin, which is why it does all these things.
Well, that whole open nature of it, the open source, I guess we'd say, nature of Bitcoin, the fact that people can track down exactly who has a wallet once they've done a transaction with them, the fact that what would make me nervous about using it is it would be possible for someone to sort of have a database of everybody they've done business with and then just dump information who that is online. Like someone.
A lot of people throw out their Bitcoin addresses as donation boxes. Like sort of if you could imagine a tax-free Patreon like that. Frederick Brennan, who controls 8chan, for example, would put up these Bitcoin addresses on the top of the page of every page of 8chan, basically asking for donations to help keep the lights on. So all it took for me to figure out how much money he actually gets managing 8chan was simply to reference those Bitcoin accounts and then see how much money he'd gotten into the account. Because of the blockchain, I can see every transaction that's ever occurred with that wallet, and I don't need special credentials to do so.
That's really dangerous, because let's say you're somebody who is not Eric Brennan, but you're just somebody who's bought stuff online.
Frederick.
And you buy something online, or you put up a donation key to ask for donations in Bitcoin. And then you buy stuff online from a seller. And then that seller is connected to another seller. Let me explain it this way. Okay, so you buy, as the person with this publicly available donation key online, you buy something from vendor one.
Yeah.
Vendor one then sells illicit substances to someone else and gets caught doing it. The way the government works.
But did I buy drugs from vendor one, or
you bought something completely innocuous? Totally innocuous. Bought something completely. You bought a computer part from vendor one.
I see.
One that you assumed to be brand new in the box.
Sounds reasonable. I mean, that would be like, there's tons of internet commerce that happens that way on eBay.
Yeah. One of the things that happens with the way government works is it sees vendor one selling illicit things. It's not going to know from the transaction whether you bought a computer part or something super illegal like parts for a machine gun that are federally controlled. Which is another kind of thing that gets sold. So you might have the federal government break down your door because it's connected you to vendor one looking for machine gun parts.
Oh, this guy's an arms dealer and I just happened to buy a blender from him, and now the government's going to be like, well, we found you on his list of clients, so here's a warrant. We're checking your house for drugs and machine guns now.
Not only that, but they'll find anything they find in those kinds of searches, because they don't necessarily know what it was. If they find a little tiny bit of weed, they're going to try to say you're a drug dealer and drag you through the courts, and they will ruin your life for a full year while they do all the investigations into things. I've known people that kind of thing has happened to. Bought something.
This all sounds great for Bitcoin. Just let me say that. That just sounds like world's untraceable cryptocurrency, folks.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. That's why, again, I hate one of my friends on Steam. Their name just come up and it says that they're playing Fallout 4, which I have not purchased yet.
Is that a first-person perspective?
It is a first-person perspective game.
I may try it. Is it expensive?
It's $60.
Oh, I see. Well, wouldn't be the first time I've paid $60 for a game that gives me vertigo.
You can always buy a copy for me, and I can play it, and you can watch.
Yeah, that's actually, honestly, that can be easier for me sometimes, is to watch a Let's Play of a first-person game, because I don't know about like other human beings, but some things make me kind of sick, like swing sets, first-person games. Portal was particularly obnoxious in that regard.
If you want to buy me a copy of Fallout 4, I will do a Let's Play for you.
All right, you're on. Let's do it. Since YouTube shit posting is the new product I'm expanding into, Let's Plays of Fallout 4 would totally fit the bill.
Awesome.
Yeah, so that sounds like a plan. We'll work on that in the future. So thanks for coming on and talking to me about Bitcoin for this test chat. Do you want to talk about anything else?
Yeah, we talked about Bitcoin. I think I just want to, if I could do one little bit of public service on where the hell money comes from and how it works.
Sure.
Just to say that, because we mentioned that at the top of the post. The government spends money into existence. That's how money is created. It's not by them creating debt. It's not by them printing it. It's by spending it. When they spend it, money is created. When they tax it,
paychecks or something.
Yeah, when they release government paychecks, when they buy electricity, when they buy pencils for their offices,
$15 muffins?
Huh?
$15 muffins?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That's they spend money into existence. And when they tax, they basically set the money on fire. They annihilate the money from existence. Taxation doesn't raise money for the government. Taxation controls the money supply. Because we all know if the government just prints and prints and prints and prints and prints and prints money, using, of course, the print key on the keyboard rather than actual printers. I mean, if it just creates too much money, you get inflation and the economy collapses.
Yes, inflation occurs, and then things are like Argentina or Weimar Germany or something like that, and you gotta drag like a whole barrel full of dollar bills to the store to get through the checkout line.
Yeah, which would be less of a problem in the modern era because you just have a barrel full of dollar bills on a card. But it would still be bad for the economy. Think of it as an engine. You don't want to choke the engine off, but you don't want to flood it either.
Well, it'd make people would start earning more money, but their wages would also become more useless.
Yeah.
It would wipe out savings. If anyone has savings, then completely annihilate one's savings.
Yeah, and so the more the government spends, the more it does have to tax just to make sure that the supply of money is stable. But there's a little bit of a problem. If you have an actually balanced budget or a surplus budget, which is what a lot of people think that you want, then the government's taking more money out of the economy than it is putting back in. And that becomes an economic drag. So what we've seen historically throughout the 20th century and what we've seen since the creation of fiat currency, there's only one thing that the government can really do to grow the economy, and that's to run a modest deficit, a small deficit. And then again, you don't have to create debt to fund it. You create debt because people want to invest in government bonds. That's a totally different subject from the idea of how the government creates money, but that's where it comes from.
The Fed's interest rate also annihilates money in by the same mechanism, yes?
What does?
The Fed's interest rate.
Yeah.
So they charge an interest rate on loans that they make to banks, and usually the stock market suffers a downturn when Janet Yellen says she's going to raise the rate. And I guess I'm trying to understand, why is it favorable for the government to have an interest rate on the money it loans people? Is it just to manage the currency market the same way as taxation does?
It's to do a lot of things, but yeah, it's mostly to affect investment. It's mostly to encourage investment. If you're someone with a lot of money and your money is disappearing in one kind of investment, but their interest rates have changed, and so by dumping it into another kind of investment, you can make money as opposed to lose money. You're going to move your money where it's going to make money. You're not going to have it sitting someplace else and losing money. So changing interest rates is just about encouraging people to move their money in different ways that we think will grow the economy right now. That's what it has to do with.
And perhaps encourages banks to work with one another rather than to the government for liquidity.
Yeah, and it's all about a process of, you want money moving in an economy. So the best way to target taxes is you find money that's sitting around and not doing anything, and you put taxes on that to encourage it to move.
Yes, state taxes are the best example of that.
State taxes are an example. Property taxes are another one. You don't want people dumping a bunch of money into property that they're not doing anything with.
That creates a landing entry.
Yeah, and so there are all those things. But this idea that the government taxes money, taxes things in order to fund itself, that is a holdover to when we had a gold standard, and that's not how things work anymore. Yeah, that's not really ever how they worked, but that's definitely not how they work now. The system is different. It's not too complicated to understand, though, and I'm mad about the fact that a lot of people think it is and say that it is. I think what that has to do with is that the people who run things economically don't really want democratic supervision, so they'd rather everybody just think that this is far too complicated to understand.
Yes. Well, this has really put American politics into a new perspective for me, because I used to think that the Republicans at least had some value in their worry that national debt might somehow cripple the economy. But now it would appear that it would be excessive taxation that could be truly crippling. And now what they say is just never going to make any sense to me.
not just excessive taxation, but underspending is a real issue when it comes to a government. When a government underspends, it can be just as damaging as a government like Weimar Germany overspending, although that's not really what they did. That's a more complicated issue.
That makes this Greece thing seem so needless.
It is completely needless. There's absolutely no point to what is going on in Greece. Nothing happening there will ever do anything other than hurt the Greek economy.
Yeah.
It will never recover at current rates. This will not fix anything.
I visited in 2012, and it was pretty bad. Athens would go down the street, and many shops were closed. There was a lot of people over the windows, a lot of for rent and for sale signs out. It was sad, and you could see it was hurting people. You know, pensions were getting cut, and the whole point was austerity and the need for euros. But yeah, I guess now that just seems really tragic that all these people have to suffer for no real needful reason except German ethics of debt.
Yeah, and the euro is another whole complicated thing. No country should ever surrender control of its own currency to any foreign power. That's kind of what happened to Germany when it was the Weimar Republic after the Versailles Treaty. It didn't owe money in currency control. It owed coal. It owed natural resources. If you look at the countries in Africa that are in trouble, they don't owe money in their own currencies. They owe money in dollars. They owe money in other ways. They don't owe money in a currency they control.
In minerals or something.
Yeah, so if you look at countries that are in trouble with debt, like Greece, Greece doesn't owe drachmas. It owes euros. If Greece owed money in drachmas in a currency they controlled, then it's not possible for them to run out of money.
No, it's not.
It's just not possible. And when they're paying off investors, they're dumping money into banks, not into the economy. So you don't have that hyperinflation worry when they're paying their debts.
Makes a lot of sense to me. I guess the real tragic thing is that the only way that euros are created then is through the whole central bank, which is in Frankfurt, and that's controlled by, actually, I don't know what controls that. I think it's Angela Merkel.
The problem with the Eurozone is trade deficits. You only are given a certain amount of euros every year from the central government. And so if you look at the economies that are in trouble, they're the economies that lose euros as opposed to the countries that gain euros. If you have a trade deficit, which means you are buying more than you sell, then more euros are leaving your country than flowing into it. So Germany, which has a trade surplus with the rest of the world, has become this predatory entity that just sucks the euros out of the rest of Europe. And because the rest of Europe can't print euros, those economies grind to a halt over time.
For what it's worth, things are pretty great in Germany, though. Like, they couldn't be more pleased with themselves, but that's what happens when you...
No, it's led to Greeks saying... It's led to a lot of Greeks saying World War II with tanks, World War III with banks. The Germans are conquering Euro again.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah. Conquering Europe.
They did that a while ago.
Yeah, and it's, that's the problem with the Euro. The Euro is a bad idea. And one of the things that's happening, one of the reasons things are not being fixed is because if you look at Finland and some of the other countries that are not particularly happy with the euro right now, they would like the euro to go away, but they don't want to be responsible for being the ones that broke the eurozone. So they're trying to force Greece and Spain and Italy to be the countries that broke the eurozone, so they can point at them and say, "How dare you for doing this horrible thing we really wanted you to do."
You lazy Italians! It's all your fault.
Exactly. It's they want to blame someone else so that they don't bear the political consequences for something that, let's be honest, they want to have happen. So that's Huh?
I mean, well, the unified trade zone, I guess, is helpful for importation within Europe.
Yeah.
With the common currency now, I no longer have to pay duty on, I don't know, apples from Italy if I live in France.
Yeah, and that's nice, but that also you know, I mean, here's the thing. Exports are a loss if you use fiat currency in general, because you're trading, unless you're in the Eurozone and there's only a set amount of that currency. Like, if you're exchanging your fiat currency for somebody else's fiat currency, and that somebody else controls their own currency, so it's the US and China, then exports are kind of a loss. You notice what the Chinese ship us is cheap stuff, plastic stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And you notice also the US has had a trade deficit for like 100 years, and it hasn't exactly hurt our economy. But trade deficits are supposed to be these awful, awful, awful things that destroy economies. And in the 20th century, the US had the greatest sustained period of economic growth since we've been checking those sorts of numbers.
Well, that's all incredible. Thank you for explaining this to me.
Yeah. But yeah, that's what's going on.
Yeah. Well, that was great. Thank you, Will McLeod, for explaining how money works. This was a great test hangout. I can't wait to come back and we'll do that Let's Play that we talked about.
Thanks for having me on.
All right. Thanks. Have a good one.
You too. Bye.
Bye.